your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is oncology pharmacist with Northwestern Medicine, Scott Lothian. He is a lifelong Glenview resident and the author of the Jonathan Dearfield Trilogy. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's good to see you, Scott. And tell us about what experience that led you to write about this detective trilogy.
I'd have to say that in high school I was not a writer. I did write song lyrics, and I could say hundreds of song lyrics when I was in school. So there was that creativity in me, but it never got to the point of a story. I'm sure creative writing was not a big thing for me, but in high school. But as I got older and I had children, I started writing a Christmas newsletter that was not typical. It was more of a lampoon of what happened to the family, funny things. The pictures were always photoshopped to make them funnier.
Yeah.
And so it was not a brag letter. It was kind of a almost self-deprecating, kind of make fun of ourselves Christmas letter.
The follies of
the follies
of the year.
And so after doing a couple of those, a English teacher from the area and Glenview legend, Alan Reuter, suggested that I finish a book that I had started. And my middle son, Patrick, also encouraged me. I started this book when Harold Washington, Perfect Posture, when Harold Washington was mayor. And it was on a long time ago. And it was on a rainy, sleet-filled night in October where it was dark, and I was coming home from work, and the windshield washers were doing this and wipers were doing that, and it was just, and I just got mesmerized, and I started thinking this book, and it was more a murder mystery on top of the political chaos that was happening, and I eventually put it away for almost 2 decades because my kids got old enough that that's all I could do was do stuff for them, coaching and whatever. So then when I picked it up from encouragement from them 2 decades later, it was a very different book, and thank God, because the first book wouldn't have been good. Right. So I don't know. I don't know what happened during that 2 decades, but it changed me, and I was able to write a pretty good book.
Yes, I would think what happened those 2 decades, you used his fatherhood and maturity.
Maybe I hit my head. Maybe my OCD got a little more. I always have stories and options and things running through my head. And so I capitalize on that. What if that didn't happen? What if this happened? And then many times I'll get an idea for a story.
Right.
And I'll kind of go from there.
I see that. We actually had an author who wrote about that Washington.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that campaign.
Right.
So it's so historic. So I feel like we're connected to within the program.
I was at Northwestern when he died, and the people in the street. It was fascinating. Yeah. That and then Lady Di when she came. The people in the street around the hospital, just amazing.
Yes, that's another historic moment. We actually know someone who met her as well. So did you start with the intention of a trilogy, or did it just kind of you knew it was going to expand after 20 years? The first time, the first book.
I knew that I wanted to write distinctly different books. I didn't want to write, here he is on the beach solving a murder. Here he is in a hotel solving a murder. Yeah. I didn't want that. I didn't want a series. I wanted distinctly different books, and the books, the structure is different, the atmosphere is different. So realistically, no, the series, it was not meant to be a series. But I did like the Jonathan Dearfield JD character, so I knew that I wanted to string him through a couple books. And the reason that it wasn't a series originally was because Deep Water starts out as a historical love story, you could even say, and then it turns into a mystery thriller. And at that point, when it changes, there's a twist that's surprising. And I didn't want to give that away, saying that this is a series. So I didn't really name it a trilogy until I wrote the final book, which, because of how I wrote them, actually, turned it into a trilogy over almost 2 decades, 3 generations.
Yes.
So distinctly different books. The Perfect Posture is not a cozy beach read. It is a story about a serial killer who poses as victims, and the people that the cops and people that are trying to stop him from doing this.
Yes.
And it is meant to impart the same uneasiness that a lot of people get from reading Devil in the White City, where you're talking about the bushes and the buildings, and then you're talking about this, H.H. Holmes' horrible murderer.
Yes.
And that the contrast, some people want to read about the buildings because they don't, and some people want to read about that. And I wanted to kind of go for that. And I think I managed that.
So each book has its own mood and own
and
tone
then
to it.
and then Deep Waters is I wrote Deep Waters to honor the sailors of the USS Indianapolis. That was the boat that carried the parts of the nuclear bomb that ended the war, and then on its return voyage was sunk, and it was lost at sea for 4 days. 900 of the almost 1,200 sailors went into the water, and only 318 came out, and then 2 later died. So it was a horrific, and during that 4 days they died from their wounds, the elements, and from shark attacks.
So many things.
And they estimate about 150 sailors died from shark attacks, and it was horrific. But I wanted to honor those men, brave men, and then I wanted to say, what kind of life would it be if you went from that tragedy and then you went on to disappointment after disappointment after disappointment? How would that affect you if you were living a life not under your control? And so I wanted to kind of meld that into a character. And then this is further wrapped in a centuries-long thread of Knight Templar history, along with a good versus evil battle on the island of Sado, which is a remote island of exile in Japan. That's where they used to send the emperors.
Yes.
And so,
so lots of research, I see, Scott.
Lots of research came together.
Yeah, you have so many interests, and you're also trying to create a very a character who's grieving deeply, but on so many levels.
The lows and the highs, and the good versus evil.
Right, and survivor guilt
always,
probably there too, and. Very complex to character start with, and that's wonderful to hear about someone that you really took time to meld, right, to think about. And so, who did you not expect to read your book? I mean, is this for like
Again, if you look at statistics, the average reader they're mostly women, and they're actually the authors nowadays are mostly women. So I guess women. But I didn't really have a target audience. The first book I don't expect everybody to read, because I had a backdoor neighbor that started it and gave it back to me, because that's not the kind of book he reads. But don't let it scare you. It's actually a love story. At first I did get I got an agent. But because it was 200,000 words long for a first-time author, I had to cut it down, and I didn't want to because of the character development that I would have had to cut out. So I don't necessarily target someone. I advertised very distinctly that this is a cop versus killer psychological thriller, and this is a historical love story, and Deep Waters, and murder mystery thriller hybrid. I mean, it's very much a hybrid. And then Daddy's Girl is a really kind of not what it seems father and daughter murder mystery, where you read, you think, oh, this is what, but then you get a different perspective of the same timeline, and then you know something else to the puzzle. And so you kind of walk through it, and it's an interesting way of kind of piecing it together rather than doing it all at the same time. So the reader is kind of grabbing
yes, well,
truths along the way.
yes, and you're layering the information because
Right.
sometimes it's maybe too much, too fast. And
Too
then
much, too
you're
fast, and then there's no
putting-
mystery.
Yes, and you're trying to put
There's
the
no mystery.
dimension to it.
Yeah,
Yes,
you may think that somebody dies,
yes.
and you may think somebody dies several times, but that's what I'm going for, and
Yes.
I want you to believe that.
It's a technique. Well, so how did you develop that technique? Was just your spending your free time, or was this?
It's hard to say. Again, I have a lot of stories kind of running through my mind. Some of the stories I know that I couldn't develop into a full book, so I kind of fold those into the book.
Yes, like subplots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
subplots and things like that.
Yeah, and how did your, let's say, medical expertise feature in the book? Did you use some of that? I would imagine you have such a wealth of.
Thus far, I'd have to say that the biggest thing that being an oncology pharmacist, and then I did a pain service for 15 years, the biggest thing that has given me is empathy. And that empathy helps me think of those stories, some really good, some really bad, and helps me to create characters that are more 3D, that are more
real,
fully developed. Some that may have backstories that you don't necessarily know, but I've created so they will react a certain way. So they're more 3D, they're more real.
Scott, I see that your background in medicine has very good uses for developing your book. So, but how about Jonathan Dearfield? Was he a patient, or who is he based on in real life?
He was not a patient. Jonathan Dearfield is kind of an everyman. That's what I want him to be. I didn't want Jonathan Dearfield to be this invincible, strong-jawed, dimple-chinned Superman. I didn't want that. I wanted him to have flaws and to be able to get down but never out. I wanted him to accept help from other people and never be the lone hero. Matter of fact, I finished the first book, Perfect Posture, and my son said that, well, JD's not the hero. And I go, well, I don't necessarily want him to be the hero. There's a point in the book that it could have ended. And he goes, well, you got to do a little something more with JD to, and so I went on to write the end of the book, which is actually pretty fabulous, and ends up in a iconic Chicago site. So I thanked him for that. But still, it's not just JD.
Right.
It's his team, but he's always there and oversees it. He could be the composite of everybody I've ever met that I looked up to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then sometimes when we look at the high suicide rate in the military, I mean, you want probably a character that is like on the cusp of that constantly, and bring that into how do you get through.
Right, and in Perfect Posture, he was kind of in a funk from his girlfriend leaving him, his long-term girlfriend leaving him, and he was kind of on a rebound, and then this case kind of brought him out of it. And so again, he was not flawless.
Yes, that's a very interesting character. Now, so what difficulties you had writing a book that you didn't anticipate?
I would have to say editing is the most.
Sounds like it from that when you started 2,000 or
200,000
words, right? That is a huge cut.
Everybody edits their own emails, but if you, which is fine, but a 200,000 word book is an entirely different animal. I can read for a couple pages, but after that, I'm basically reciting what I remembered what I wrote and not really reading the words. So I've learned that I have to go through reading, looking for certain things, like looking for punctuation or looking for contractions.
I see.
Because you don't use contractions when you're narrating, but you do sometime.
Dialogue.
And there's some characters which I don't want them to use contractions because they're a little more formal, or they're good, or they're evil. So I want to try to get that and get a different tone, and then story continuity and things like that. So if you're looking for those those simple things as you read through, 200,000 pages or 200,000 words is a long, but the others are 72 and 92, so that was a little easier. But yeah, that. And then it's really easy to self-publish these days, and that's great that we can do that. And I think more than 50% of the books are self-published. But once you've done that, marketing is very difficult.
Another animal.
And
so,
I think you have a question about that.
Yeah. So how was your book received, and then how did you? Do you take care of your own social media, or do you have a website?
I don't have a website. That might be in my future. The marketing. Nowadays, with the influencers and things, I think social media is pretty much close to broken. It's just sometimes the hashtags don't work anymore. Things that I did in 2016, 17, 18 to sell the first book don't actually apply, don't really work, and so the marketing through Facebook, and now there's Threads, and Twitter is kind of weird, X. There's so there's TikTok and Instagram, and so there's a lot of stuff there that works and doesn't work. I'm surprised every once in a while when I answer a message or I put something out that somebody will buy the whole trilogy, but it can be kind of depressing when you're doing all this stuff that they say you're supposed to do, but nothing's happening. It's a big sea of books and everything else. So again, I didn't do this to become rich. I did this for fun, and I am enjoying it.
So many of our authors, our guests, have more reasons to write than what it comes back in your cash register.
Right. I feel for the author that's trying to make a life out of it, because it can be depressing.
Yes.
I'd love to have a number one book, but I'm not depressed that I don't.
Yes. And so do you go to like talks, or do you go to book signing, and do you have arranged that?
I have done. I did a book signing at the library. I did a book signing someplace else. I haven't really optimized that. Now, in another couple months, I'm going to retire, so I'll have more time for the social media aspect and things like that. I do have my book available at the Book Bin in Northbrook.
All right.
And I'm looking for more bookstores that accept indie books, which is great. And then, of course, you can also read it for free at the Glenview Library or the Williams Bay Library, which is another place that I've lived.
Yeah. Well, I found you through Facebook, so you have to say social media does kind of work.
Oh no, so I do like social media, but there's
not dependable.
It's not dependable. There's the hashtags don't really work. The algorithm is controlled in a different way. I don't know on Threads. I don't know how it works. how somebody writes a line and they get all these responses where, I just don't know how it works. And so it can be frustrating, and there more and more people are peeling back the layers to kind of give you an idea of what to do, what's best. At this point, I think Amazon ads are probably the best thing for books.
That's where you are, yeah. And about your covers, did you design them, or did you have a graphic artist?
The first cover was my middle son, Patrick, who was the graphic and product design person.
I see.
And so we did that. If you look, it's my hand holding the puppet, and we had fun with that. And then the second book, I really wanted that water, that open sea look.
Yes.
And so I designed that, and then my son, there's a shark kind of in there.
Yes.
He did that. And then the third book, Daddy's Girl, the cover is exactly what I wanted, and it was done by AI.
Really?
Yeah,
Amazing.
and with the certain prompts, you have to get the prompts right, and you have to get lucky, because you can say girl holding a teddy bear, and the teddy bear is walking next to her, and and the teddy bear's this big, and she's
That's right. That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was actually AI, and it got the atmosphere and everything. And again, that's kind of a metaphor for the book. It's not a little girl; she's a sophomore high school soccer star that is in this book.
Yeah. So you have a home team. And it sounds like your boys are quite creative, and they have a creative mindset.
They are creative. Matter of fact, my youngest son is a singer-songwriter. He goes by Wallace Tallman, and he kind of took over for the lyrics because he writes great lyrics. He's turned a couple of my songs, or grabbed a couple lines and turned them into songs, which is great to do. But he has hundreds of songs and lyrics, and he's very, very, very good. And then my oldest son is kind of a technical writer, and he actually started writing lyrics for songs for my other son, and they're actually putting an album out together.
They work together. That's wonderful. And
a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what advice maybe you have for our new writers out there? What do you think they should do when they're?
I think the most important thing is be true to yourself, and be an actual author. Don't look, oh, there's a hole here for a story that whatever. Don't be an entrepreneur. Be an author. Write for yourself. Write a story that you wanna read. And you don't have to be an authority on a certain subject, but you do have to triple check your facts. That whether you get them off the internet or the library or wherever, triple check your facts, because I relate this to medical shows, where there's somebody on the team that's supposed to tell the actors what is correct and what's not.
Right.
And either they're sleeping, they're drunk, or they're not on set. Because lidocaine is not how you pronounce lidocaine. So where was that person that allowed that? And so you don't want that to happen.
You must be hard for you to watch medical shows, right?
It's really hard. Yeah.
I can imagine the kind of oversight that occurs constantly, right?
When House came out, we watched it, and it was a fascinating show. And then I just kind of had to step away, because you have to get it wrong so many times, and then you get it right is the formula. And I go, this is not good. I'm stepping away.
It's stressing you out watching.
But doing the research, like there was a point where I was doing research on the USS Indianapolis, and one of the depictions had the oil on the wrong side of the boat, of the ship, and that would have been bad to get that wrong. So I had to triple check that to say, oh, this is, and some people get starboard and port mixed up, but that's how that happens.
The whole ship term.
You just want to be
world in itself.
You just want to be sure about what you write if you're not an authority.
Yes, it's like baseball, the whole language in its own,
Exactly.
right? So what connects you to Glenview?
I've actually lived in Glenview all my life. I was born here, except for 1 year. After we got married, I've lived here. I'm a GCC member. I went to Lions School. I went to Springman. I went to GBS. I graduated in 1976, and I was part of the first variety show.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Amazing. Yes.
And they're about to have their 50th anniversary.
Right. I can't believe it.
Believe it or not, I was a singer-dancer. And so at 6'7", I looked a little like young Frankenstein out there, especially during the tap routine. But, you're supposed to dance like nobody's watching.
Right.
And I guess that's what I did. But I really, really enjoyed it.
What a great memory.
Yeah. And then my father built a A-frame cottage up in Williams Bay. And so my mom used to take us up there for the summers. And so that's where I played baseball. I didn't experience Glenview Youth Baseball.
Okay.
So then when my kids were old enough, they actually, I actually coached them on baseball and basketball and soccer. And two of my favorite stories, and I have this here.
Oh, yes.
But two of my favorite stories is that my son Ryan went through a whole entire season with a guy named Whitney on his team that he didn't realize was a girl. Nobody on the team knew this was a little girl,
Okay.
and it was pretty funny. And she was a good player. She was a good player. Back then, that's when the boys and the girls played to a certain age after
Right,
T-ball and
yeah.
stuff. And I thought that was kind of funny.
That is.
Yeah.
Is. So what would you like to say to our writers, or any kind of quote?
I would say write for yourself. I would say, again, you don't have to be an authority on anything, but you do have a contract with the people that are reading your book, the readers,
Yes.
right?
You have integrity.
And
You
integrity,
have to
and so you have to resolve plot lines. There's such a thing as a loose end, but an unresolved plot line is a no-no.
Oh yes.
And if that happens, it can take away from a good ending.
Yes. it
Why
does.
didn't he say?
Right.
Why didn't they do? And I don't know. So many movies and books these days leave stuff on the table that could just tie it all up,
Yes.
and it's just very frustrating for me. I just read a book that was very good and it had a great ending, but the author didn't justify why one person was where they were at the end. And that would have taken just a couple lines of text. I actually went back and looked, and it just
No
didn't do it.
explanation.
No, it was kind of contrary to what you would think. Why would they go there? Why would they want them there? And they could have pushed it a little more and kind of resolved that, but it was a great ending. So a lot of people just kind of washed that away.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you have to resolve things. In Deep Waters, there's a kind of a not lame excuse, but a weak excuse for this person to leave his home, and then it becomes more obvious that he has to go. But that excuse is not resolved until the last 50 pages, 20 pages of the book, and then it pays off big time. Oh, that's why. And so that's kind of what you're going for. And then, as we've talked about, right beyond the book, write your characters big and 3D, so people care about the characters even after they've stopped reading and say, oh, I wonder what they're doing now.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
that's what you're going for as an author.
Yeah, that was a tall order.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
it's always good to aim high and then work that direction.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for watching and joining us next time on Off the Shelf.